Okay, now on to my mostest favoritist revolution, France. France is just a whole bunch of people going crazy. And so, if you're looking at radicalness of revolutions and are revolutions truly revolutionary, France is the most radical, and that's based in part on the fact that French Enlightenment thinkers had way more radical ideas than their British counterparts. So, that plays a lot into the French Revolution. The fact that they went so violent as a way to try to change their government, that was really radical at the time and way more revolutionary than any of the other revolutions. Did they ultimately achieve their goals? Not really, but it's still a fun one to talk about. Okay, so like I said, this one might end up having to be 2 videos because this one you're not familiar with. I know you're not familiar really with the Haitian Revolution, so there's a lot of stuff there, and that plays in with France. All right. So, with the French Revolution, there's a lot of stuff that plays into why it happened. You have, like I said, Enlightenment ideas that were really, really radical that caused people to start thinking about the government in new ways. And then you also have the fact that the French helped the colonies during the American Revolution, which led to a massive, massive war debt. And debt's probably one of the biggest causes of the French Revolution because in order to pay off this debt, France decided, hey, we need taxes, just like Britain did to help pay for the 7 Years' War. The only problem with that is the people who had the money, the first estate, which is the clergy, and the second estate, which is the nobility, didn't have to pay taxes. So guess who has to pay taxes? The 98% of the population that's poor, who has no money. And again, rule number 1, keep your peasants happy. When you tax your peasants who have no money, and then on top of everything else, while they are super in debt and have declared bankruptcy, there's a hailstorm that destroys all their crops, and now you have poor peasants who have no food. That's a wonderful recipe for disaster. And that's kind of what happens. So I'll get into like some specific things about what happens with angry, starving peasants, how they turn into a mob later. All right, so French society was divided into 3 estates. So like I said, the first estate is the clergy, which is 0.5% of the population. They own 10% of the land. The second estate is the nobility. That's about 1 to 2% of the population. These are all your royalty, your high-ranking government positions, people in the military, and then, like I said, the 98% of the population, which was about 27 million people, make up the third estate. And they are responsible for the labor that the first and second estate live off of. So basically, like rural people, rural people, wage laborers. You did have some wealthy, educated people who were part of the third estate, but they weren't quite nobility. But they're still wealthy. They still want power. So it's usually those people that end up leading revolutions. So drawing a comparison to when we start talking about the revolutions in Latin America, those were all led by Creoles who are wealthy, but they don't have power. And so it's typically these people who feel they are just as good as the nobility, who have all of the other stuff, just maybe not the titles that go with it. They're going to seize their opportunity to start leading these revolutions. So I just have different things that are broken down. Here's one breakdown of the 3 estates. Here's another breakdown just to kind of show you how the population percentages break down, like who's part of what. All of that. I can probably hide that. We don't need that. Okay, so like I said, France goes bankrupt. So besides taxing the peasants who have no money more than they already are taxed, one of the things King Louis decides to do, which is Louis the 16th, which is XIV, not the 14th, which is, I'm sorry, Louis the 16th is XVI. XVI. Gotta get my Roman numerals right. Okay, so he goes through and he's like, well, let's just change my financial minister who's in charge of the economy, because obviously the first one wasn't doing what he was supposed to. So let's move to the second one, which is Jacques Necker. Don't care that you know his name, but I'm just telling you because my French history class pays off. So his response now is, hey, let's have the first and second estate pay taxes and let's restrict the power of the king. King's like, ain't no way that's happening because the rich people aren't paying taxes. So what Louis does is he calls a meeting of the Estates General, which is kind of like France's parliament thingy. It hasn't met since 1614. And this is 1789. Okay, so it really doesn't ever meet. So what they want to do is to try to figure out a solution to this whole financial crisis that benefits everybody, in air quotes, but really it's just benefiting the first and second estate. All right, so what happens? With the Estates General, each estate gets one vote. Here's the problem. The first estate has like 300 people, 300 representatives, remember, and they're 0.5% of the population, but they have 300 representatives. The second estate, which is 2% of the population, has 300 representatives. And the third estate, which is 98% of the population, gets 600 representatives. So the third estate has to sit in the back so that they're not heard, they're not paid attention to. And while they're there, the only thing they want to fight about and discuss is how the Estates General is organized and how it's not fair. Blah, 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 blah. So, long story short, the third estate's like, hey, we should have equal voting rights, or we should have more of a say because there's more of us. And, if you don't start giving us what we need, well, we're just going to farm our own assembly and make our own decisions. So, they take a break because that's what you do during meetings. You take a break. And when the third estate left, the king locked them out of the meeting room so they couldn't come back in. So, you can't assemble if you don't have a place to assemble. And they're like, okay, peace out. We'll just go next door to the tennis court and we'll make our own little government. So the third estate they don't really get the choice to walk out, but they're locked out, go next door to the little tennis court, name themselves a National Assembly, declare the tennis court oath, where they promise to keep meeting until they've written a new constitution. There are some of the nobility and clergy that join them because they're like, all right, this is a really good idea. Then Louis decides to surround Paris and the Palace of Versailles with the military so that these crazy third estate people can't get in there. They fire the financial minister, who the people like because he wants to tax the rich people. And why wouldn't the poor people like that? So that you fire the crowd favorite. And then on July 14th, which happens to be Bastille Day, the French people go and storm the Bastille. Go figure that they do it on Bastille Day. All right. So again, looking back at causes of the French Revolution, because this is kind of when it really starts, the fact that they had all these financial problems, they had this massive war debt, the inequality of taxation. There's lots of social inequalities with the way the estates are set up, lack of representation, and then these radical Enlightenment ideas by French Enlightenment thinkers. And then basically when the revolution starts, they just want more equality. So we're about to get to part 2 of our French Revolution video, and that'll be next.